We should be live now, right? Can you guys see me and hear me? Yes, yes. There we go. Fantastic, fantastic. Right, and you can both hear me and see me. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. I'm really happy to be here tonight. A little bit nervous, a little bit nervous. It's funny to just speak in front of an unknown number of people I've never seen. Thanks Carlo for the feedback. I'll woke you up again just to tell me that everything is working. I only needed to press the button go live. I am really sorry. This is the first time for me. It's awesome to see everyone. Lots of messages coming in already. Right. So let's get let's get the party started. Hi, I am Giovanni and I live in Dublin. I am a stake pool operator of RaspberryPi Cardano Staking Pool. The pies are sitting just beside me. I will not show them yet. I want to create a little bit of suspense and anticipation. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. This is awesome. I'm really humbled by the amount of people that have been reaching out to me in the past few days, asking me to explain how I built my cluster and how can everybody out there do the same. And I am only honored to be in front of everybody tonight, giving you an overview of what I've put together, and with the promise that in the coming weeks I will be providing a tutorial, possibly broken down in 3 to 4 episodes, on how to build a stake pool on a single Raspberry Pi. Not as complicated as the one I have, otherwise 10 episodes won't be enough, and I don't want to bore people with unnecessary details. And without further ado, I have quick table of contents I want to go through. So what are we gonna do? Are we gonna go through tonight? So first of all, very 2 quick lines about myself. Who am I? What is my career and how I got to love Cardano and build an SPO. Then a quick disclaimer. Then I want to give a quick shout out to a Raspberry Pi. I previewed possibly the first Raspberry Pi SPO, and then I'm gonna go through 4 sections that are the hardware that I'm using for my Cardano stake pool, and then the basic steps for server admin that I had to go through in order to set up my cluster. And then here then it gets like really awesome, and it is like I'm going to be talking about the cluster bootstrap and the cluster management. So very quick intro to 30 seconds about myself. My name is Giovanni, I'm Italian, I'm currently living in Dublin, and I am a software engineer. I have a degree in computer science. I got it back in Italy a few years back, and then I came to Dublin, and about 7 years ago I started to be passionate about cryptocurrencies. I have mined a couple of cryptocurrencies, one of which I will not name it, maybe I'll put it in the description. I've mined a couple of coins, and then I decided that of course it wasn't profitable, so I sold all the hardware back. And then I came across Cardano a couple of years back. I really love the approach and the science-first approach that Charles Hoskinson and Cardano Foundation have started, and I became passionate about the project. Last August, with the Shelly release, I was a little bit late to the party, but because I saw how expensive was the hardware to mine Ethereum and these kind of things, I wanted to really see how incredible, if the promise of proof of stake being a really well taught and implemented algorithm for proof of concept could really run on inexpensive hardware. I was like, why not Raspberry Pi? So I did a very quick Google search, and here and I found out that there is a guy called Alessandro that he studies in Munich. Shout out to him. He's the stake pool operator of the Berry pool. His handle on Twitter is at Berry_Ales. He's a great guy. He's helped me to get started. And then I also want to shout out Roberto, of another SPO of the pool Peace. He's helped me a lot in putting a few things together. So late last year, I managed to get these babies running, and now my stake pool is up and running. Quick disclaimer: I'm gonna go through some software and hardware installation, modification, and setup. I am not responsible if you do exactly the same on your Raspberry Pi and you burn it and you explode it. It's not my responsibility. I'm explaining things to the best of my knowledge. So before doing anything on your Raspberry Pi, check instruction and ensure that whatever you're doing is correct based on your knowledge and understanding. Second thing, if I ever mention anything about values of cryptocurrencies or my thought about cryptocurrency, if they're going to increase in value or decrease in value, this is not financial advice. It's just like the way I think about things. So I would not recommend to either buy, sell, or anything about cryptocurrency. So do your own research, buy and sell at your own risk. So we're done with the disclaimer, and I've already done the shout out of the previous Raspberry Pi owner. I think this is the moment where I switch the camera and I'm gonna show you the babies. So I'm gonna now just quickly move the main camera, and I'm gonna be explaining what are the components of my cluster and how they are connected together. So you should be seeing now, this is the stack of Raspberry Pis. There are 4 Raspberry Pis. They are 4 Raspberry Pis of type 4B with 8 gigabyte of memory. They are assembled together with a very cheap stack that I frame that I bought on Amazon. I'm gonna be showing you, I'm gonna add all the links of all the components that I've been using in here. Sorry, I'm a little bit shaking, I'm a little bit nervous, but anyway. So the wiring is very simple. So first of all, here there is also the TP-Link. There is the TP-Link gigabit Ethernet network switch. There are exactly 5 ports. One is the one that is taking the connection in, networking, that is the one in the back. And then here there are the 4 Ethernet plugs that are connected in each of the Raspberry Pis. The networking is very simple. Cable comes in, cable goes out and connects to the switch. On the side, there are the 4 SSD drive. I have the branded model here. These are Crucial BX500 120 gigabyte SATA. The way they are connecting is via a SATA adapter to the USB 3.0 of the Raspberry Pi. The reason why I went for the SSD, I'll tell you in a second, but long story short is that the SSD is up to at least 3 times faster than the SD in every type of communication, sequential and random. On the back there is the, showing you now, it's the one in the back, bottom here is the power adapter. And I bought this one knowing that it's like a power adapter to charge cell phone and the tablets and all this kind of jazz. The power adapter is USB charger RAV power 60 watt, 12 amperes, 6 ports. Like in the description says, you can charge phones and all the other things. I was like, who knows if it works with Raspberry Pis? And it actually does. So this thing is powering, I bought a very short USB-C connection that goes from the back of the power adapter on. Let me check if you guys can see. I can stretch any longer. These are the places where you're actually powering all the Pis. And so this is for the hardware. There isn't really any much more that you need to know. The connection is very simple. The USB 3 port on the Raspberry Pi is marked in blue, and so you know that it's going to be faster, while the classic 2.0 is the one in black. You can see back here is just like the black one. So putting those things together is extremely simple. The most challenging part is to assemble the the case on which they are assembled, because there are very, very small nuts and bolts. So that part can be a little bit challenging. So I think I went through the hardware already. The wires, the USB cables are of brand Ugreen. I ordered them from AliExpress and they're extremely cheap. I bought like 10 of them, as well as the Ethernet cables. I think they are Ugreen as well. They're like not even €1 or $1. It's very, very cheap. Let me see what else. And I think I covered pretty much everything. So yeah, just I've actually noted down here the Crucial SSD is in average 4 times faster than the SD card that you can install in the back of the Raspberry Pi. Unfortunately, you will need at least one of them. Because despite the firmware of the Raspberry Pi has been enhanced to be able to run straight away on SSD instead of having to manually tweak the firmware, you still possibly need to launch the command for upgrading the old system and automatically upgrades the firmware, and then just changing very briefly the configuration will allow you to boot from the SSD. But we will see this in 2 minutes. So I think we can switch the settings of the recording. So here we go. First and foremost, I have created a GitHub repo project. I have a small company, not company, but just like a company on GitHub called Speedwing, in which I publish small pieces of work. And in this case, I've created a project called the Cardano Staking Pool Edu, where Edu is for educational. And in here, there is a very recent, even though it's not the very latest version of the scripts and the configuration that I've been using to set up the cluster of Raspberry Pis. The most important thing that I want to say is that there are going to be 3 steps through which I'm going to go. The first one is the server admin, so it's a number of steps that need to be done in order to get the Raspberry Pi ready, also in terms of security. And then the second thing is the cluster bootstrap and what I'm using to basically bootstrap and manage the cluster and why I went that way. I'm going to spend a couple of words in. And then the actual cluster management. So let's say that there is a new version of the Cardano node to be released. How do I go about that? You've seen, just before I start, you've seen that I have 4 Raspberry Pis. Only the top 3 are actually connected and working. The 4th one, I'm going through some experimentation to see if I can improve even more the stack. But the most important thing, and you'll be surprised about this, I actually don't know which of those Raspberry Pi is actually running the block producer node and which one is running the 2 relays. I do know though, and I'm pretty sure about this, that each node is running one and only one, either block producer or relay node. But which one is which, I don't know and I don't care. And you'll see how this is possible in a couple of minutes. So as part of the tutorial enhancement that I'm going to be doing, I will just reshuffle and reorganize those markdown files in a better way. But the first thing that you will have to do, and I'll show very briefly, is to how to replace SD cards with SSD. The reality is that the SD card is very fast, but the Cardano node does a ton of I/O, and you have to be as fast as possible, or otherwise you may risk to lose your slot and miss your block. And that means 2 things. First one, you're losing on your rewards. The second one is that you're slowing down the network. And it's my understanding that in the long run, such nodes may be penalized, and so they will possibly get less allocations in terms of nodes, or I don't know what kind of other penalization could happen. So using an SSD hard drive is definitely the way to go. So the way you have to do this is relatively simple. The first thing is to just open the Raspberry Pi website and just download the default image on the SD card, boot it. I'm gonna explain in details how to, in a headless way, SSH onto the Raspberry Pi, and then the most important thing is to run the so-called dist upgrade. Basically, this step is going to ensure that the latest and greatest version of the firmware is installed on the Raspberry Pi, and the Raspberry Pi will have, the firmware will be able to then switch and boot directly from SSD. Unfortunately, this is not the only one step you will have to do. There are another couple of steps, but are documented here, and even though the documentation is not great, all the steps are exactly here. You will have to check out some additional files from this repository and ensure on your new distribution that those files are copied accordingly. Unfortunately, Raspberry Pi cannot explode on the fly compressed kernels, so you will have to uncompress this before. And the last step you will have to do is to ensure that those values are set as follow. There is a long explanation behind this one. I really don't want to go into too much details, but this is really what you have to do. Basically here we are saying in this boot order that we want to also enable, try to look for an operative system on the USB SSD card. I will rearrange this documentation so that will be possible to everyone to follow, because this is low cumbersome, but it's actually very, very simple. I followed this from other YouTubers and blog posts on the internet, and it's really, really easy to follow. This is the first one. The second one is this is going to be a little bit about the server admin. There are going to be a couple of important points about security. You don't want anyone to be able to SSH, or basically log in into your Raspberry Pis. In general, even if it is an easy to instance in AWS or whichever virtual machine into the cloud or another server somewhere, you don't want anything but yourself to be able to go to SSH or log in, open a console, open a bash on those servers. So what you need to do is to tweak the SSH daemon, that is basically the daemon that is responsible for granting access on the actual host. What we want to do here is we want to disable definitely the PAM module, pluggable authentication module. We want to disable password authentication. No one can assume, disable root login, and then I'm not sure about this one. I will document myself about this and I'll give more details later on. But we only want to be able to SSH on those hosts given a strong SSH key that is like 256 bytes. So this is going to be really, really strong, and only the owner of this key will be able to SSH onto the Pis. Also, doing this is much simpler than it sounds. I do also have to be sure that whatever you guys are doing, and this is the way I tested it myself, that once you modify those settings, you actually can test yourself that the SSH authentication is actually disabled. The password authentication, of course, is disabled. So this is the test. Again, I'm gonna polish a little bit the documents, and you will be able to test this thing yourself. Here there are some notes about Kubernetes and Snap, that is a packet manager as well. I will not go into Kubernetes details neither now, or I will mention something neither in the first release of my tutorial. Kubernetes is an extremely powerful tools that is used in cloud projects, so AWS and GCP, on-premises as well if you have bare metal hardware and you really want to provide a fine degree of abstraction on your hardware. This is a beautiful tool, but this is extremely complex to use, and for the purpose of the first release of a tutorial I'll just skip that out, but I will keep Docker in. Docker is going to be fundamental in order to decouple the management of the Pi from the management of the code of the Cardano node. If we are able to keep those two things separated, it means that we can leave the professional, not the professional, I'm just saying the professional, to build the Docker image that you just build in one line, and you don't care about how to build the Docker image. Docker is, for those of you that are less expert about IT at this level, Docker is a way of virtualizing the hardware. So you don't care if you're running on Raspberry Pi, or you're running on a MacBook Pro, or you're running on a Windows machine, etc., etc. If you have a Docker running, you can, I'll put it very simply, you can just pick up a Docker image that has been configured or built by someone else into the cloud, and just run it on your node. That is running Haskell, that is the language with which the Cardano node has been built, or is running Python, or whichever other binary code or whatever, that doesn't matter. Because the Docker image, you will build the Docker image with one command line, and this is how we're gonna go about that in the next tutorial. Or you're just gonna download the Docker image in case the Cardano Foundation is gonna be providing an ARM64 compatible Docker image. That I really hope they're gonna do so, because they're gonna save me and many other people like hours and hours of useless compilation just for building the Docker image every time a new release is done. And so for the moment, just ignore everything that is going down here. But if you, like me, are very happy to have more than one Pi in a network, this is one step you will have to do, and it's just basically set a name to those Raspberry Pis. I have lots of imagination, and I just call them Pi 1, Pi 2, Pi 3, Pi 4. So this is the set with regards to the server admin part. Let's see what is next. I will skip over Kubernetes, and now I will go through the cluster bootstrap. Basically, this is the amazing thing about Kubernetes. If you mix it with GitOps, GitOps is an operational approach to manage software, the release of software. So basically what happens is that you have a GitHub project, exactly like this one that you're seeing right now, and all the configuration is persisted, is saved in one folder. In this case, it's the Kubernetes project. Excuse me, the Kubernetes folder. So everything that is written in those YAML files, again, I'm going from expert mode to pro mode. Everything that is written in here basically translates into configuration on the cluster, so that if I want to change something, I change some configuration in this project, and then automatically, and I'll show you in a minute how, there is a little piece of software that I will have to install manually, at least the bootstrap, the so-called bootstrap I will have to do manually, but then everything else is updated auto-magically. So the tool is called argocd, and argocd is a continuous deployment tool that will basically take my Kubernetes Cardano Staking Pool here. This is like a skeleton project, and it will just install it onto the cloud. In here, you will not find my private key or stake key or whatever, but this is just an example of how the Cardano stake pool is configured. So in particular, at the time that I was testing this thing, I had one mainnet and I had 3 testnet experimental pools, because I was just like messing around. I wasn't sure whether or not it was working. But the configuration of a Cardano stake pool, at the end, it is as simple as just those few lines of YAML, and then all the complexity has been resolved by someone else, in this case me, that have created charts and all these kind of things. So should I ever manage to get funds, I'll definitely apply for funds to make a full-blown tutorial with the Kubernetes and everything to do exactly what I've done. But this is going to be like many sessions because of the complexity of the tool. But the complexity of the tool also allows you to do rollouts in a very smooth way. And you can actually, and I'll switch now the view, you can actually control it from this dashboard. So you can see that this dashboard is hitting my Raspberry Pis that are running on 192.168.0, and 230 is a virtual load balancer, so I'll just put it quote unquote, and again, more information about this another day, but there are a number of components here. You can see that there is the base config, there is the Cardano pool mainnet, there are my keys that I'm not going to show you. Then there is the DD client. Basically, the DD client is nothing else than a piece of software that is basically ensuring that should my public IP change, because of course I'm running this phone from home and my ISP could change my IP, so this thing is actually ensuring that the blockchain is always updated, is using my DNS name as a way of connecting to my pool, but if my pool changes IP, the IP bound to that DNS name needs to be changed. So this little piece of software is periodically going and checking if I'm still on the same IP address. So this client is, we can actually see it running. If I go on the pod, that is the little piece of software that is doing that, you can see that basically it's doing some periodic checks and say, where am I running, blah, 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 blah. So I have a number of DNS name all bound to the same IP address. Please do not try to DDoS denial service, DOS me, or I'll come and get you home. So in here there is a little warning, because the website I'm using might have gone down, but this is still periodically checking my IP address. And then going back to the main screen, here is where my the so-called mission control. Secrets management. I'm using another tool that is called the Sealed Secrets. This is a Kubernetes specific tool. Basically, this allows me to change the keys on the Pi without even touching the Pi, without even going onto the Pi. I do everything on those projects, and the keys get propagated straight away into the Raspberry Pi. This uses a public private set of keys with which I encrypt my secrets with the public key, and the Pis, they have a copy of the secret key, of the private key, so that they can translate those secrets again and then start up the node. This allows me to even forget about the SSH key that I need in order to get on the pool, on the actual pool, on the hosts of the pool, on my Pis, and everything is done straight away from my GitHub repository. So every single piece of configuration I can do from the GitHub repository. I'll check that in on Git. I'll press the button, 30 seconds, and the configuration is propagated. And then if I need to restart the Cardano pool, the Cardano node, the block producer, typically the block producer, I go on my mission control here again. We can have also the network visualization, and we see how, for instance, the traffic is going. We can see like the pod that are running. We have here the block producing. I'm using Greek letters to call my the relays is the lambda 0 and the rho 0 are my two relays, and the alpha 0 is my block producing node. So if I want to restart because, for instance, I updated my keys, my certificate and my keys. Sorry, I need to switch to this all. No, sorry, I need to remove all. Sorry, classic visualization. So if I want to restart, for instance, my where is the STS alpha, I'll just click here and I'll go like restart. So I don't have to SSH onto the host. Is everything done from here? This web UI is inaccessible to everyone except me. It's password protected, so good luck in trying to hack it. So I'll press the button and my block producing restarts. I'm not gonna do this now, just in case I have a block lined up. I know I don't, but just in case. And then I can basically drive and manage my pool from here. And one thing for the people that are a little bit more experienced and have an understanding of Kubernetes, etc., I am using persistent volume claim here, right? And I was really hoping, of course, because I have to download the full blockchain on each of those nodes, and this thing is a gigabyte and gigabyte of data, and of course these are a little bit slower than normal computers, still very powerful. Having to mess with these disks would be would be nice if it was optimized. So I was really hoping to be able to use the volume snapshot so that Kubernetes would deal with this with these volumes automatically. And if I wanted to create a snapshot or a backup or something else, excuse me, this would be done automatically by Kubernetes. But unfortunately, the CSI driver for Kubernetes and Raspberry Pi that I'm using can only be installed on one node, and I have 4 here, so I can't actually use this one now. I'm really hoping that, so this means that I will have to manage the volumes and also the copy of the blockchain and the backup of the blockchain. This needs to be done manually. So if one of my node dies and cannot restart, I just can't do everything from my mission control screen from this screen, but I will have actually in this case SSH onto the host and move things around, tarball and all this kind of jazz, and you will, and I unfortunately see how this is actually impacting on the CPU. So I have to know whether or not I have a block incoming so that I will not screw my pool over. Last but not the least, and now we are going into like I think fancy graphs that somebody like, other people don't. But I am managing my cluster with, sorry, I never shown this one. I'm using both Grafana and Kubernetes and Prometheus. Prometheus is a famous cloud monitoring tool. And I'm actually running it on Raspberry Pi. This is absolutely normal, but this is like the evolution of these Raspberry Pis. They are extremely powerful. So I am using, in this case, Kubernetes, argocd, most of the components I've been discussing so far. Those are tools, platforms, projects that have been designed to run into the cloud. So on AWS, very powerful machines. And because of the evolution of how powerful the Raspberry Pis have become, I can actually install those things on the Raspberry Pi. And they're actually running really well, really fine. They use very little CPU, as I'm going to show you in a minute. So Prometheus is basically is a monitoring stack. This sounds very, for those of you who know what Prometheus is, this is going to sound a little bit reductive, but this helps me keeping an eye on the health status of both the Raspberry Pi cluster as well as the what the Cardano nodes are actually doing. And Grafana is basically the dashboard system that I was showing you a second ago, on which I'm going to go on now again. So currently you can see the 3 nodes, instance 1, instance 2, instance 3. The 4th one is missing. I used to have the 4th one as well. And those 3 panels in vertical are telling me each one of them. The first one is the temperature, the second one is the CPU usage, and the load average. The temperature, I always like to keep an eye on the temperature because I just want to be sure that I'm not melting those guys down. I know that Raspberry Pi can work up until in a range of 70 and 80 degrees Celsius, so do your conversion in Fahrenheit, for a number of minutes without damaging the hardware. But this can be the normal exercise temperature because otherwise they will just break. Now that I have the heating on beside me, the temperature has gone up a little bit, but they are running on 40 degrees, that is, I think, a wonderful temperature for those boys to work. The temperature is exactly the same whether it is a relay node or it is a block producing node, so there is no difference. Now, if you look at the CPU usage, you can see that there is a pattern. 2 CPUs are very similar to each other, another one is a little bit different. So I kind of gauge that my instance with IP number 10 is actually running the block producing node. And that's the reality of this because I checked earlier on. So the block producing node uses a little bit more CPU compared to the 2 relays, except when there is a lots of spam on the network and there are like a ton of repeated transaction. And so one of the 2 nodes will see a little bit of a peak. You can see also how the load average as well stays very, very low. My CPUs are now at 20%. The Pis have 4 cores each, and I'm literally here using only 1 and 1, so the other 3 are idle. And while the block producing node is using 40% of the CPU. So it's doing almost, I'd say, about twice as much as the relays. But there is still plenty of room for more work to be done. Load average here is is a different metric of how the CPU is doing. And even in this case, you can see that this is when things are bad and we are comfortably underneath. Even in this case, it peaked a little bit and then went down again. As long as this goes up and down, it's not a problem. If it was constantly on the top, that would be an issue. And the next and most interesting dashboard is the one about the actual block producing node or relay. So I told you earlier on that alpha is the name of my block producing node, while lambda and rho are my relays. So let's start from lambda first. Uptime is 6 days so far. I restarted one after the other to do some maintenance. Not all the graphs are available. This is because I shut down the mempool logs. This saves a ton of CPU, and I was like, yeah, why not? So this tells me how long before the end of the epoch, and it's exactly 4 days. We know how many slots are we into the epoch and how many epochs are left. Sorry, how many slots into the epochs are left. Big in purple, which epoch are we? And then some additional stats about the chain density, the block speed, synchronization, the slot height, block height, all this kind of jazz. No information about the keys, keys, because relay node, they don't have it. And then everything else is empty. On the alpha node, that is the block producing node, we actually have a little bit more information. I definitely have the mempool information on, so that I know that I'm actually connected to the blockchain and I'm actually processing the transactions. This is fundamental. I'm struggling to have the slot length information here. I think in the latest release the metric has been changed. Connected peers is also missing as well. I have to work on that until we're enabled. And these are some information, really useful information about the key evolving signature keys. This is the important one, because when this number, this is a countdown, when this number goes to 0, your block producing node will just stop working, and you don't want that. And now is everything green. Those guys also change color on when things are getting bad. And I think the one last thing that I can do is actually SSH onto those nodes. So let's do this. So I am on my own laptop. Let me increase the font, because I remember that this was unreadable. So SSH. So here I am on the Pi 1, that is, as I told you, the first Pi into the cluster. I'm not going to show you what's in here, but because I'm working on Kubernetes, I can do get namespaces. Namespaces is basically a way of splitting the workload on Kubernetes. I have many workspaces, but the most important one, a namespace, but the most important one is the Cardano mainnet. Here I'm retrieving the number of pod, or basically virtual machines, that are running into my namespace. And sorry, dash, and I haven't been using this in a while. And you can see how I have my topology updated running. I'm not going to explain this what it is. It's just a way of fetching new bodies into the network. And here you can see I have my Cardano node rho, lambda, and alpha, with alpha being my block producing node. If I want logs, key logs -f Cardano node alpha -n Cardano mn, and here we will say all the spam. For the logs though, I don't have to get here. I actually can see my logs from here too. I have to do a couple of clicks though. So if you have questions, and just start to prepare them, I will answer them in a minute. I'm just looking for, I think if I go this way, topology updater. Oh my god, where is it? Oh my god, where is it? Sorry, I'm getting a little bit tired here. pod, there we go. Alpha. Logs, and I can see the logs in real time from here too if I wanted. So yeah, so this is pretty much it. It took about a couple of months from zero to hero. I got an amazing and a lot of help from the community, and this was very important because the community really helped a lot. I repeat, Barry from Alessandro from the Barry pool and Roberto from the Peace pool, they've been absolutely fantastic. Roberto in particular, he was always happy to help me out. So thank you everyone. And I am now opening the switch to comments. Does anyone have questions? So I can see a question that says, did you get the SSD rack from Amazon too? Yes, I actually have two. The one from Amazon and the second one from what's it called, from AliExpress. The one on AliExpress was much cheaper. On the one from Amazon, I think it was $10 for just a piece of metal, but I was in a hurry and I needed it, so I bought it. Yes, I will definitely upload the video for this. I will just be 100% sure that I hope that YouTube does this for me, otherwise I don't know how to do that. Does anyone have any question? Any other question? No problem, Derek. It depends on the level of complexity. I went a little bit. My setup is, it uses current cloud technologies that you don't need. I use them because I use them in work, so I was comfortable using them. So I decided to adopt them, and they make my life easier. But if you want to start playing with it, you definitely can start to do that without going overcomplicated. So, moment of CPU, Andre Fonseca is asking about CPU peak. Yes, definitely at the epoch change. For the first time in a few months, my block producing node restarted. I've never seen that before. I've seen relays crashing on epoch change. Last night was the first time that my BP went down and restarted. So yeah, and another time that I saw CPU going nuts was when I still had the mempool logs turned on for my relays. There has been like a couple of weeks where there was lots of spam on the network, and that was just insane. Like one of the two relays was just receiving a shit ton of traffic and going nuts. So yes, ADA MG. So the nice thing about Kubernetes is that if one of the Pi dies, whatever was scheduled on that node will be moved onto another node. I will also get alerted, so I receive a message on my Telegram channel, private Telegram channel, in which Prometheus and Grafana, they tell me that something is wrong. So I will be made aware just to run on the laptop and check what the story is. If it is if it is the relay node going down, it's one relay node going down, there are no problems because I have the other one running. If it is the block producing node, I better just go to the desktop. Let's put it this way. So, good question, Yain Bell. So, I don't know how's that possible, but since I started to work on this project, I've been much more aware of my IP address, and it hasn't changed, like, ever. I do know that it takes 10 minutes to update. My software runs every 10 minutes, it does a check, check what the IP address is, and if it's different, it goes on my DNS provider, DNS name provider, and updates the IP. Yes and no. So to the question, would Kubernetes also help with having offsite backups in case of internet drop at your place? The answer, the TLDR, if you don't do anything, the answer is no. But you could install some software that basically synchronizes with possibly another instance of Kubernetes running somewhere else that says, look, I am crashing here, I can't do this thing, so do something else. So I could potentially implement a disaster recovery. What in the field is called disaster recovery, so that a message is sent and say, I can't work, something is wrong here, and the other cluster possibly could start picking up the work. I don't have anything in place, as it would be, as I just basically managed to get to this level of complexity, and there are other things that I have to fix first. The disaster recovery is more out of scope at the moment. I'm happy to know. Thank you, Mauro. Grazie, Mauro. Thanks, Mauro, that informed me about the score of Napoli. My favorite team is playing and is winning, leading 3-1. Very happy to hear that finally. So okay. What it changes if my IP provider changes IP? Nothing. I will just possibly be offline for about 10 minutes. When the ASP changes my IP, my software takes about 10 minutes to detect it, because it runs every 10 minutes. And then as soon as it detects it, it updates the record into the DNS provider, and it takes another minute to propagate. So in about 11 minutes, I will be online again. I'm happy to take another couple of questions, or up until like 10 o'clock UTC. So just feel free to go on and ask more questions. This is exciting, guys. This is really, really nice. Thanks everyone for hopping on the channel. And yeah, be with me tonight. I was very nervous. Now I feel a little bit calmer, so good. Right, it looks like the stream of questions is slowing down. I'm gonna give another 2 minutes while I am giving my greetings. I am really happy, but this I wanted to say that of course, if you want to support me, I will be there is no Patreon or nothing. I will definitely apply for Fund 4 to try to make a more extensive guide about how to do a stake pool with the Raspberry Pi. But in the meantime, if you still want to support me, it's as easy as delegating to my stake pool. I would only love to see my delegation going up a little bit, because I'm still struggling around the 1.5 million mark, and I would love to see more love to my pool. Yes, the reality is that so have you considered buying a static IP for my stake pool? I actually am not sure if my service provider does that, but if they do, I may try to reach out. The thing is that while I do love Raspberry Pis, I am wondering if as the node Cardano node becomes more complex and possibly requires more hardware, and because I really want to go hardcore on the layer 2, I'm not sure in that case the Raspberry Pi will be enough. So should that be the case, I will switch my cluster into a testnet cluster, so that I can continue studying and providing support to the testnet network, and migrate my pool to the cloud. But this is far away into the future. We will see. You considering buying a static IP? Okay, how do you think one should start to learn all this? So this is JM. This is a good question. I think that at the moment, as I started, if you're not into into IT, if you are not familiar with Ubuntu kernels and all this kind of jazz, can be a little bit more challenging. So what I would recommend is to maybe start to get familiar with the basics of Linux and Unix, just basic file management, moving, and this kind of jazz. And definitely do a very small, even on Udemy you can find a Docker course that will teach you lots of things that will definitely be useful. And then start from there, and then find resources online. There is a forum, right? There is I'm gonna add to the description below. There is the Cardano forum, and there is like a section specifically for stake pool operator. There is also a Telegram group, and those people are absolutely fantastic, and the forum is fantastic. And if you write there, I'll post my handle as well on the Cardano forum. You can just ping me straight away if you have any questions, and I can try to help or point you to the right resources. But long story short, at this moment in time, I'm not aware of a guide to spin a stake pool for people that have no experience at all in terms of this. There is still like quite a steep learning curve. In Bell, my saturation is like 2%. I only have 1.5 million, and I can go up until 65. Well, actually 32 until the end of March. So I have plenty of room for new delegators. So come to me, folks. AdaMG, my pleasure. I am only honored to be here tonight. I'm doing things that I would have never dreamed. I was telling to my friends in Italy, guys, you won't believe I'm gonna be live on YouTube, and I was just like, I've never thought I would be doing anything like this in my life. The name of the pool is easy. It's Easy One. You can't go wrong. Easy. Oh Jesus! Not with the exclamation mark. It's Easy One, like this. There you go, in orange. Thanks, Andre. You're very welcome. It was my pleasure. Fantastic, guys. Thank you very much. I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. 56 minutes in. No, actually, done. Yeah, 56 minutes in. I am honored and humbled at the same time. It was a blast. This is gonna be up soon. Give me feedback on Twitter. Follow me, retweet, like, whatever. I am very lucky and very happy to be part of this community. This is absolutely great. So I'll hug you virtually with the mask on, because still COVID. And then I'll chat to you later to next time. Thank you, and bye.